there! Today we are going to talk about blood type. Blood type is probably the most complicated simple concept that you will encounter in biology, or at least sort of basic level biology, because it seems like, oh, blood type should be kind of easy. But when you dive into the details, it's actually a little bit on the tricky side. So let's talk about it. So, first of all, what kind of blood types are there? Well, most people are familiar with the differently lettered blood types. So we have blood type O, we have blood type A, we have blood type B, and we have blood type AB. It's almost like they work together. They do. You'll see it in a moment. And then each of these, so OA, B, and AB, could be what we call negative, Rh negative. So it'd be the Rh factor, or positive Rh positive. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Like, what does this come down to in terms of blood? To understand this, we need to look at some blood cells. So I am going to provide some cute little blood cells so that we can see what these letters and pluses and minuses actually mean. All right, we'll start with the letters. So I'm going to ignore the pluses and minuses for now. Each of these things, each letter, is essentially something that tells the body what the cell is and where it belongs. So let's think of the body like some kind of fancy nightclub that has a very particular group of people who's allowed in. You are allowed in if you're wearing a certain kind of hat. So A, blood type, has these big pointy blue hats. As long as you are wearing blue hats and not other hats, you are allowed into the A club. The B club is a little different. It only lets you in if you're wearing round green hats. And only if you're wearing round green hats and not any other kind of hats. So let me finish showing the round green hats. And the AB club. The AB club is actually pretty chill. They're like, well, you could totally come in if you're wearing the green hats. So put green hats on these guys. But also, you can come in if you are wearing the pointy blue hats. And although many of these cells will be wearing both hats, it's cool. You only need one to get in. In fact, you can always be wearing less hats than you need. And you'll notice the O blood cells all the way at this end, they're not wearing any hats at this point. And they just kind of sneak into the clubs. They're doing just fine. Nobody cares about them. Well, so how do these cells keep things out of their clubs? Well, if you think about it, you can think about it as them having bouncers. So the A club wants people with pointy hats, is okay with people with no hats, but if you come in with that big B hat on, oh, you are getting bounced. So these are the bouncers. They hang around and they keep you out. If you are in the B club, then we're only going to bounce you out if you're wearing the A hats. A hats get bounced. So unfortunately, AB here that wears both hats, they don't get to go in the A or the B club because they're wearing a wrong one. Doesn't work that way. Now, what about the O club over here? We said O can slip into anybody else's club, but their club's actually very exclusive. You cannot come in if you are wearing any of these hats. So they will bounce both A and B. Let me do that for both the plus and the minus, and then we'll talk about the plus and the minus. Okay. So that's our starting point. Now let's gear shift to the plus and the minus, because what that is yet another type of hat. If you belong to the rhesus positive club, you you get to wear a rhesus hat. I'm going to make those little orange squares. That's another hat. So all of these cells at the bottom here are also wearing orange square hats. Now that's a problem for the negative clubs. If the club is negative, if the body says, hey, this is a negative space, positive guys are not allowed in. So we need yet another set of bouncers, this one for positive things. So the negative O will bounce out positive O. Negative A will bounce out positive A. Negative B will bounce out positive B. And negative AB, even though they're okay with A and B, will still bounce out positive AB. The AB positive club is the one everybody's allowed in. Sometimes we call this the universal recipient because it is a person who can take any blood cells into their body. They don't have any bouncers. Nobody's trying to keep anything out. Over here on the O negative side, we call this person the universal donor because the bouncers live in the body or in the plasma of the blood, but only the blood cells get donated. And these little blood cells with no hats on them, don't forget, they can go anywhere and hide any place because nobody's trying to bounce them out. That's why O negative is the universal donor. It's the one we can give anybody because these cells don't cause any reaction. But AB positive is a universal recipient because their body doesn't react to the cells. Okay. One final thing to think about in terms of the actual blood is where are these bouncers hanging out? Well, most of the time where they are is the plasma of the blood because these are proteins. In fact, they are antibodies. So antibodies, which are our bouncers, live in the plasma or the liquid portion of the blood. You can actually separate blood and plasma, and you can actually donate plasma. It's not usually as big a deal, but the antibodies do go along with it. So you want to be careful when doing that you don't give these bouncers to people who have those blood types. If the A bouncer accidentally gets added to a person with A blood, it's going to get real mad and start trying to punch out the blood cells. It's not quite as bad as adding blood cells, but it's still a problem. Interestingly enough, this person over here, you'll notice, has nothing in the plasma. Their plasma is the best to give to people. So that's the basics of how blood antibodies and antigens, or the little hats, work. And how bodies will react to different kinds of blood. Mostly it's moving in this direction. So if you are this way, you can give blood to these people. So O can give to all of these. A can give to AB, but not B and not O. B can give to AB, but not A and not O. And if you have positive blood, you cannot give to somebody with negative. Negative people need negative blood. No positivity allowed. All right, one more tiny factor to add to this is the genetics of how you pick it all up. So what kind of genes do you have? You might remember from some previous videos and things I've talked about that everybody has two genes, one from mom, one from dad. If you have O-type blood, you probably have two O genes because you don't have any genes for any hats. The hats have to come from somewhere. If you have AB blood, you better have an A gene and a B gene because you have to have one gene for each hat. If you have A blood, you need to have at least one A gene. You could have two A genes. You could also have an A gene and an O gene because the O doesn't provide a hat anyway. You'll notice O is kind of recessive because it hides. And of course with B, you could have two B genes or a B gene and an O gene because again, the O can hide. It doesn't provide anything extra. So that means that if an A person and a B person get together, they could both be hiding an O gene and have an O child. Or they could have an AB child by combining. Or these could combine the A with this O and have an A child, or a B with this O and have a B child. So that's the most versatile. An O person has to give their child an O gene. So their kids could be O, AO, BO, but not AB. And the AB person has to give their child either an A or a B, which means they cannot have a child with O. That's important to note. Finally, there's the Rh factor, which is also genetic because it's a hat. And what's mostly important is you need at least one Rh positive gene to have an Rh positive, which means if both your parents are negative, you will also be negative. But if even one is positive, you could be positive, or you could be negative. Hopefully now you see why this is the most sort of complicated little concept in biology, but it's pretty easy to work out if you're careful about it. All right, I hope that was interesting and that you enjoy my bouncer and club metaphor. You've learned a little bit about blood type today. Thanks.